Hello everybody. In this lesson, you are going to find the volume of a cone. You will be able to use a formula to find the volume of a cone, and you are also going to use the formula for the volume of a cone to find a missing dimension. Volume of cones. The volume of a cone will always be 1/3 the volume of a cylinder with the same height and same radius. The formula for the volume of a cone is 1/3 base times height, or volume is equal to base times height divided by 3. Since the base of a cone is a circle, the area of the base is found by using pi r squared. This is similar to a cylinder, where a cylinder's base is also a circle. Let's do some example problems. Find the volume of each cone below. Round to the nearest tenth. As you can see, for example 1, you have a cone. The formula for a cone is V is equal to 1/3 times pi times radius squared times the height. Plug in the values. We're trying to find volume, and when we find volume, we're going to take 1/3 times pi. Our radius is 5 squared, and our height is 12. In our calculators, you can type in 1, ABC button, 3, times the pi symbol, times in parentheses 5 squared, end parentheses, and in parentheses again, 12. Those numbers in, you're going to get 314.1592. If we're rounding to the nearest tenth, that means we have 314, and the 1 is going to round up to a 2 because of 5, and then it's inches cubed. Number 2, again, we have a cone. So we're going to use a volume is equal to 1/3 pi r squared times the height. You'll notice for this example that they gave us the diameter, the length across the circle. To find the radius, we have to take 22 and divide it by 2, and we're going to get 11. This is our radius. Plug in our values to find the volume. 1/3 times pi. Our radius is 11 squared times our height, which is 10. Again, in your calculator, you can do 1, ABC button, 3 times pi symbol, in parentheses 11 squared, and then another parentheses times 10. And when you plug that into your calculator, you'll get 1,267.109. So to the nearest tenth, 0.1 or 1/10 centimeters cubed. Number 3, the volume of several cylinders is shown below. Note, the cylinders are not drawn to scale. Use the dimensions in the table below to find the volume of each cone. Then, under the cylinder column, record the letter of the cylinder above that could have the same height and the same radius as the cone. Not all the cylinders will be used. So, for one of our dimensions of the cone, we have a radius of 8 and a height of 2. Our volume for a cone is 1/3 times pi times r squared times height. So if we plug in our values, 1/3 pi r squared, so 8 squared, times your height, which is 2, and you put that into your calculator to solve, you're going to get 134.04. Rounding to the nearest tenth, that's 134.0 units cubed. To find the volume of the cylinder with the same height and the same radius, you could do one of two things. One, you could use the volume of a cylinder, which is pi r squared times height, and plug in your values. Pi, radius is 8 squared times the height, which is 2. And when you do that, you get 402.1 units cubed. Or What you could do is, because we know a cone is 1/3 of a cylinder, you could just take the volume of a cone, 134.0, and multiply that by 3, and you'll get 402. You'll notice it's 1/10 away from our actual volume using the formula versus the cylinder of multiplying it by 3. Either way, you're going to get an estimation, and the closest cylinder that is approximately close to 402 is cylinder C. So cylinder C would represent a radius of 8 and a height of 2. For the other problems, notice this is a diameter, so you'd have to take half of the diameter to get 3 for your radius. And you can plug in the same value for the volume, and then you can do the same thing of multiplying by 3. You should get approximately 37.7 units cubed for the cone, and the cylinder would be E. Let's do some application problems. The cone below has a diameter of 12 units and a slant height of 10 units. Find the volume of the cone. First off, slant height of 10 is a term that we've used in the Pythagorean theorem. The slant height is actually what it sounds like. Slant is diagonal and it's a height. This is actually this part of our cone. And so this is 10 units. We also are given that the diameter is 12. But what we need is to find out how to get this height, because now the height is missing and we need to know the height in order for us to find the volume of the cone. Well, what if I connected all three of these points here? Here's the height, half of the diameter, and here's your slant height. What did you just form? A right triangle. So we can perform the Pythagorean theorem in order to find our missing height. We'll take half of 12, which is 6. 6 is going to be one of our leg lengths. Our hypotenuse is going to be 10, because that's your slant height. And now we're just missing the height, which will be one of our missing legs. So if I use the Pythagorean theorem, we're missing a squared or b squared. Doesn't matter which one you plug it into. And we're going to solve for a or b. So 6 squared is 36, 10 squared is 100. Subtract 36 to both sides, and you're left with a squared is equal to 64. 100 minus 36 is 64. Take the square root of each side to get a is equal to 8. Now that we know that our height is 8, we can use the volume of a cone to now find the volume. So V is equal to 1/3 pi r squared times height. The volume is equal to 1/3 pi. The radius is 6 squared and our height is 8. And once we put that into our calculator, again, one more time, 1, ABC 3, pi symbol, in parentheses 6 squared, in parentheses 8, you're going to get a 301, and rounding to the nearest tenth, it will be 301.6 or 301 6/10 units cubed. Number 5, Isabella constructed a cylindrical vase that has a volume of 63 cubic centimeters. Jason constructed a cone that had the same height and the same radius as Isabella's cylinder. What is the volume of Jason's cone? Well, if you remember from the definition of a volume of a cone, as long as the cone and the cylinder have the same height and the same radius, you can just take 1/3 of the volume of the cylinder to find the cone. So what that means is, if you have a cylinder, a cone occupies 1/3 of the cylinder. And if we know that 63 is the volume of a cylinder, we can just take 1/3 or divide it by 3 to get the volume of our cone, which is 21 cubic centimeters. In this lesson, we learned to find the volume of a cone, you will use the formula V is equal to 1/3 times pi times r squared. To find the missing dimensions of a cone, you can use the same formula and substitute your known values and solve for the missing dimension. That's a wrap on this video. We will see you on the next one.